Alright, welcome back to another video. This is my second to last video before Election Day. It is Election Day. The polls close in eastern Kentucky and eastern Indiana in an hour and 45 minutes. This is going to be a Senate video. It'll be pretty quick. Surprise, my predictions haven't really changed, but I still want to go through all the important races just to make sure you guys know what's going on. Some of these states I'll look at the polls, some I won't. I'm going to actually start with the southern states. Virginia, you have Mark Warner defending his seat. In reality, he is going to win. I expect Joe Biden to win this state by about 10 points. Anything less would be a bit surprising, certainly because the Democrats have done so well in Virginia in recent years. Here we see Warner 15. I think that somewhere around the 13 to 15 point range, just because, Virginia still had a lot of Republican votes, but it has shifted Democrat, which is why it's not safe. But just because it's kind of exiting being a swing state, it is not safe. It is likely. Another state that I'm saying, which is crazy because there's an incumbent Republican running, is I think that Colorado is not lean but likely Democrat. I think John Hickenlooper is going to get a solid 7-8 point win, and I think the Democrats are going to pick up in Colorado. In the state of Minnesota, I think it's going to be closer than people think. Tina Smith shows pretty good leads. I think that she's going to do worse than polls say. I think Tina Smith is going to win by 6 points, maybe less. So I'm still going to put it actually, I'm going to put it as not likely but lean. This is one of the races I think Democrats will do worse than expected, just because I don't think there's going to be a lot of ticket splitting. I think Joe Biden's going to win Minnesota, obviously. I think he'll win by a similar margin, probably a 4 to 5 point margin. So he'll do a bit worse than Tina Smith, who I think will get in the 7 to 8. I'll just put it as likely 6, 7, 8 point range. Michigan is one state where I think the Republicans could pull a shocker, despite the fact that I think Joe Biden's going to win the state by maybe 5 to 7 points. Gary Peters versus John James. John James is an African-American Republican. I think if he can get some African-American votes from Flint and from Detroit, he might be able to make it close. But in reality, I think Gary Peters is going to win. But I think it's going to be a lot closer than expected. Polls say 6, 7 points. I think Gary Peters wins by maybe 3 points. I think this is going to be surprising for the Democrats. I think John James has a future in the state. He lost to Debbie Stabenow 2 years ago. But I think Michigan is going to surprise some people. I'm actually not going to put it as I'll put it as likely. In the state of New Hampshire, Jeanne Shaheen is going to win, really, because the Republicans didn't find a great candidate. I think she'll win by about 13 points, which makes it safe. In the state of Mississippi, Democrats kind of just started paying attention to the state. Mike Espy is the Democrat there. There could be a runoff if neither gets to 50%. I think Cindy Hyde-Smith wins. I think she wins by around 5 to 6 points. I think this kind of scares Republicans. But I do think that this is kind of a one-time occurrence when, I said 5, 6, 7 to 9 points, which is definitely worse than that Cochran did. But I think that, Cindy Hyde-Smith's going to win this race. It's going to be closer than expected, but she will win. Alabama is a flip for the Republicans. I think Tommy Tuberville wins this race by about 10 points. Polls indicate 12, 11, 14. I think he wins by 10, which makes this not safe, but likely. I'm going to skip Georgia. In the state of South Carolina, I think Lindsey Graham's going to win. I think he's going to do better than expected. I think Lindsey Graham wins by about 4 points. Donald Trump won the state in 2016 by 14 points. I think he wins it by 7 points in this election, and I think Graham wins by 4 points. If we look at the polls, it's closer than, so actually Graham's doing a bit better in the polls. If we look at the 538 forecast, about 77 times in 100, Lindsey Graham wins. I think Republicans will win this race, but by less. But by more, actually, than the polls say, because a lot of people think that Democrats might flip this one. In the state of Montana, I actually did some calling of voters in Montana. The key for Steve Bullock, the Democrat, is how many Republican votes can he get. If he can get over 6-7% of Trump voters, I think he can win this race. Montana, it's going to come down to a matter of maybe a few hundred or a few thousand votes. Just because it's a presidential election year and Steve Daines is the Republican incumbent, I would say that this would be tilt Republican, but it could go either way. If there was one seat that I'm labeling Republican that I think would flip, it would be Montana. In the state of Maine, Susan Collins is in the fight of her life against Sarah Gideon. A lot of people think this is an easy Democratic flip. I don't think so. It's definitely within the margin of error. I think Susan Collins, being the most bipartisan senator 7 years in a row, the Republican who votes with Trump the least, one of the votes that saved the Affordable Care Act, and her recent vote against Amy Coney Barrett will allow her to win this race. North Carolina is a flip, but I think it's going to be less than what polls say. North Carolina is interesting because recent presidential elections would indicate that it actually is trending Republican. Obama won it in 2008 by less than 1%. Romney won it by about 2.5%, and Trump won it in 2016 by about 4.5%. I think Kyle Cunningham, I think he does in this 4-point range. There were some 10-point, 8-point. I think he wins by 3 to 4 points. I think this is a Democratic flip, but I think it's tilt Democrat. In the state of Alaska, this is another state that could surprise us by flipping, but I think in reality, Dan Sullivan is going to retain the seat. If both Montana and Alaska do end up going Republican, I think it'll be by similar percentages, just because, these are typically Republican states that are a bit more Democrat this time around. In the state of Arizona, I think it's a relatively easy flip for the Democrats. Definitely not in the 7 to 9 point range. I think Mark Kelly wins, but I think he wins by about 3 points, 3 to 5 maybe, which I'm going to put it, I'll put it likely. I think Mark Kelly flips the seat, and the Democrats now have, which is crazy because 4 years ago, Arizona had 2 Republican senators, Jeff Flake and John McCain, and after this election, I think they'll have 2 Democratic senators, Kyrsten Sinema and Mark Kelly. In Texas, I think John Cornyn, the incumbent Republican, is going to win. I think he's going to win by maybe 2 points. I think it's really going to be closer than most people think. Polls show that John Cornyn might win, by 5%. I think he wins by a much smaller amount than polls show. In Kansas, I think Republicans won this race when Chris Kobach lost in the primaries. Chris Kobach, very unpopular, lost the governor race in Kansas. I think just because Roger Marshall is, conservative, popular, government experience, I think he wins. I think he wins by more than expected. I think he wins by about 5 points over Barbara Bollier. In the state of Kentucky, I think Mitch McConnell is going to win, and I think he's going to win by double digits. Amy McGrath is a great candidate, but she lost to Andy Barr in one of the most liberal districts in Kentucky in 2018, so I don't think she's going to be able to defeat Mitch McConnell, especially in an election year. Presidential election year. In both of Georgia's races, I think they are both. I think the actual Senate race is tilt, and I think the and I think the special election is lean. I think that Perdue wins the seat by a similar margin that Trump does. I don't think Jon Ossoff wins this. Jon Ossoff lost a congressional race a few years ago in Georgia, in suburban Georgia. Lucy McBath has since flipped that seat. I think Perdue holds on by maybe 1.5 to 3 points. And in the special election, I think it's going to go to a runoff. I think it'll be Doug Collins versus Raphael Warnock. And I think Collins ends up winning in a special election in November, which I think will be after Joe Biden wins, because I think Joe Biden will win the election. And I think because Joe Biden wins, it actually hurts Warnock, and Collins wins by about 5 points. In the state of Iowa, I think it's going to be a flip for the Democrats by a few hundred votes. I think Joni Ernst loses the seat, despite the fact that I think Trump is going to win the state of Iowa. Greenfield has been doing better in polls. Joni Ernst, nothing really special. She in 2014, she promised massive change, and she hasn't really done much. And I think Iowa's a much more moderate state than Joni Ernst is a moderate politician. So 50-50 is the same as it was a little while ago, except I've moved North Carolina, I think, from lean to tilt, and I've made Michigan closer, Georgia closer, Texas closer, and Alaska closer. If there was one race I think flips in favor of the Republicans, it's Iowa. I think Joni Ernst could win that seat. For the Democrats, it would be Montana or Maine. If we go back to what I said, I kind of want to do a best case scenario, worst case scenario. So let's clear it. The best case scenario for the Democrats is that they win in Oregon. They flip Montana, Colorado, Arizona. They win in New Mexico, flip Texas, flip Kansas, flip Iowa. They win both Georgia. They flip South Carolina and North Carolina. They win in Virginia, flip Maine, win all the Northeast states. Independent, who caucuses with the Democrats, Alec Rose, wins in Alaska, and they win everywhere else. This brings them to 58. I do not think they will win in Alabama, even in a best-case scenario. I do not think they'll win in Kentucky in a best-case scenario, and I don't think they'll win in Mississippi in a best-case scenario. For the Republicans, it would just be, playing defense and playing it well, and maybe going on offense. I think they win Montana. I think they would win Arizona, Alaska, Texas, Iowa, Kansas, Georgia, North Carolina, Maine, and I think then they would flip Michigan and Minnesota, but still lose Colorado. This would be a best-case scenario for the Republicans. So, if we go back to my predictions, we have it at 50-50. I think Kamala Harris is the tie-breaking vote for the Democrats. Shortly after this video comes out, there will be a presidential election prediction, the final one. The polls close very shortly. I hope you all watch. I don't know what kind of videos I'll be doing this week, because remember, this is not election night. This is election week. I expect all results to be in probably by Friday or maybe Saturday. This is going to take a while. I hope everyone is patient. Hopefully this will be a safe election. There's been a lot of rumors of riots and looting. Hopefully there is not much of that. I think the Senate is tied at 50-50. Again, if the Democrats are to pick up one or two more, it would be in Montana and Maine. If the Republicans were to hold on to one or two more, it would probably be in Iowa and Arizona, or Michigan. So we're at 50-50. That is all for now. The polls close in 92 minutes in Eastern Kentucky. So I hope you all watch. Until then, that's all for now.